Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we have a tale of unexpected discovery, family dynamics, and the power of patience. Sarah Thompson inherits her father's gas station, dismissed by her brothers as a worthless relic. But as she digs deeper, she uncovers a hidden treasure worth millions, natural gas deposits beneath the land. What follows is a journey of uncovering secrets, protecting a legacy, and transforming a once-forgotten business into something that will change the future of her small town. Join us as we explore how sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones that others overlook. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start the story today. I stood in the parking lot, the old neon lights of Thompson's gas and service station flickering faintly above me as the wind howled through the empty lot. The keys were heavy in my hand, a reminder of the responsibility I now held. I gazed at the weathered, peeling signs of the station that had once been my father's pride and joy. To many, it might have looked like a forgotten relic, a place long past its prime. But to me, it was more than just a business. It was a memory of my father, his dream, his hard work, his love for this humble corner of the world. This was where I grew up, where I learned life's lessons, and where, despite the odds, he had built something from nothing. But my brothers, David and Jack, they didn't see it that way. They couldn't understand why I'd spent my life here, working alongside Dad, helping him keep the place running after Mom passed away. To them, the station was a burden, a dead-end property in a town that had long since lost its charm. They had moved on to big cities, pursuing careers in real estate and law, while I stayed behind, helping Dad with the business and taking classes at night to finish my mechanical engineering degree. The laughter from their voices still echoed in my mind, mocking the very idea of this place. The reading of Dad's will had been a formality, one that I had dreaded, yet felt compelled to attend. When the lawyer read aloud Dad's final wishes, my brothers' faces twisted in disbelief. They barely hid their disdain as the lawyer mentioned the gas station, treating it as nothing more than a relic of a forgotten era. To my daughter, Sarah Thompson, I leave Thompson's gas and service station, including all property and contents thereof. The lawyer had read. David, always the first to scoff at anything that didn't align with his business-driven mindset, had actually snorted. Dad's old junk pile, perfect for the grease monkey of the family, he said, laughing under his breath. Jack, dressed in his crisp corporate suit, had smiled that familiar condescending smile. Well, Sarah, at least you can work on cars to your heart's content. But honestly, you might want to sell soon. That land's worth nothing now, especially since they rerouted the highway. Nothing but a liability. They had been less amused when the lawyer continued reading. To my sons, David and Jack Thompson, I leave the remainder of my liquid assets to be split equally between them. The lawyer paused briefly, glancing at the two of them, their faces lighting up with expectation. Dad had never been rich, but he wasn't poor either. The liquid assets amounted to a modest $100 each, pocket change to my brothers, who had built their careers and fortunes far from here. They had no idea what it had been like to stay behind, to watch Dad work 70-hour weeks just to keep the station afloat, to watch him pour his heart into something, knowing it wasn't going to make him rich, but keeping it going because it mattered. To him, it was more than just a business. It was his legacy. I felt a pang in my chest as I stood there, facing the familiar, dilapidated sign. There was a beauty in its age, a kind of quiet dignity that spoke to me more than all the money my brothers had. To me, this station wasn't just a place, it was my connection to Dad. I had grown up here, learning to change oil before I could even drive, doing my homework on the counter while Dad worked, falling asleep to the sound of him tinkering with engines late into the night. Every corner of this place held a memory. The doors creaked as I pushed them open, the bell above chiming softly, as it always had. The smell of motor oil, old coffee, and dust filled the air. It was exactly as I remembered it, frozen in time. The counters were cluttered with remnants of the day my father had passed away. Coffee cups were still sitting there, half empty, and a newspaper lay open on the counter. Its crossword puzzle unfinished. Dad had always loved crosswords. He'd say they kept his mind sharp. The trick, Sarah, he'd tell me, is knowing which puzzles are worth solving. I smiled softly at the thought, running my fingers along the counter. As I moved deeper into the space, I couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. It wasn't just the memories, it was the realization that this place had been his dream. And now it was mine to carry forward. I walked into his office, the old, worn desk in the corner, still cluttered with papers and notes. The leather chair, smooth from years of use, creaked as I sat down. There was a sense of peace in this space, a comfort that only came from being surrounded by something so familiar. It was as though, for a brief moment, I could hear his voice again, guiding me through the steps of his work. Check everything twice, Sarah, the devil's in the details. I began to sort through the piles of old paperwork, receipts, invoices, Christmas cards from loyal customers, even the original purchase agreement for the station. But as I sorted through the files, a pattern began to emerge. Some documents were marked with small red dots in the corner. Others had underlines or circles around dates and numbers. It became clear to me that my father had never done anything without a purpose. Every piece of paper, every note, had been carefully placed, meticulously organized. And then, I found it, a photograph album tucked in the bottom drawer. It was full of old pictures of the station from when it first opened in 1975. My father stood proudly in front of the building, Mom by his side, pregnant with David. The station had looked so different then, freshly painted, its bright signs drawing customers from the highway that ran right past it. But what caught my eye was something in the background, something I had never noticed before. Behind the station, almost hidden by overgrown bushes and weeds, was a strange structure, an old metal framework that looked like a derrick. I frowned, trying to place it. I didn't remember it from when I was growing up. The back lot had been unused for years, overtaken by weeds and brush. Dad had always promised to clear it someday, but it never happened. Curiosity got the best of me. I grabbed a flashlight from the supply shelf and headed outside to investigate. The sun had risen higher, burning off the morning mist, and the weeds were waist-high as I pushed through them. My heart began to race as I drew closer to the structure. Could it be? Before I could get any closer, a car pulled into the lot, and I heard the gravel crunch under the tires. Through the weeds, I saw David's expensive SUV parked next to my old pickup truck. Sarah, he called out. You here? We need to talk about this place. I sighed and tucked the photograph into my pocket. My curiosity still piqued, but my mind now turning toward what was to come. This wasn't just about the gas station anymore. It was about to become much, much more. I stood up, taking one last look at the hidden structure before I made my way to meet my brothers. The day was just beginning, but I knew things would never be the same again. Sarah, are you sure you're here alone? David asked, his voice carrying a hint of disbelief. He had already walked past me and was looking around the old station as if trying to figure out how anyone could find anything of value here. Jack, trailing behind him, gave me an apologetic smile but said nothing. His expression was one of polite indifference, like he was humoring me by coming to see the place but didn't really care. I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. I'm just going through Dad's old files, I said, though there was more I hadn't said. I hadn't yet shared what I had discovered, the image of the derrick behind the station, or the eerie precision with which Dad had organized everything in his files. I'm fine, but I don't think this place is what you think it is. David folded his arms, an impatient look crossing his face. Look, Sarah, I get it. You love this place, but it's over. The highway got rerouted, and this area's gone downhill. We've both built lives elsewhere, and you've done great, but you can't keep holding on to this. Dad would have wanted you to move on too. Jack cleared his throat, uncomfortable. What he means is, we're offering a buyout. Sarah, $30. You don't have to fight over something that's clearly not worth anything anymore. I paused for a moment, my hand instinctively moving to the pocket where I had tucked the photo of the derrick. I wasn't ready to tell them just yet. They wouldn't understand. The look on David's face made it clear that he wouldn't see the station as anything more than an outdated business. But what they didn't know, and what I was starting to understand myself, was that Dad had known something they hadn't. Thanks. But no thanks, I replied firmly, standing tall. I'm keeping the station. I don't think you understand just how much it meant to Dad. And I'm not selling. David's face darkened. He took a step closer to me. Don't be foolish, Sarah. You can't run a gas station anymore. The chains have taken over. This place has been dead for years. Maybe you should take the money and get out while you still can. It's more than enough to make a fresh start somewhere else. The sting of his words hit harder than I expected. I had spent my life here, keeping this place afloat when they had long moved on. The betrayal was almost palpable. But I refused to let it show. This place had always been my home. My refuge. It was a part of me that I couldn't just let go of. David didn't wait for a response before turning on his heel and heading back to his car. Jack hesitated for a moment, looking torn, but followed suit. Just think about it, Sarah, he called over his shoulder. You don't want to end up regretting this. As they drove off, the sound of their tires spitting gravel echoed in my ears. But I barely noticed. My mind was already back on the strange structure I had seen behind the station. What had it been? What did it mean? I had to find out more. That evening, after the station had closed for the day, I returned to my father's desk. The letters, the notes, the red dots, I felt a compulsion to go deeper. Something told me there was more to this than a simple rundown gas station. I spent hours sifting through the files, my eyes scanning each document with increasing intensity. Then, buried beneath a stack of invoices, I found a geological survey from 1975. It was marked with one of Dad's red dots, the same ones I'd seen on the files earlier. As I read through it, my heart raced. This wasn't just a regular property survey. This was something far more significant. The document detailed the mineral rights for the station's land, including the backlot where the derrick stood. My hands shook as I realized what I was reading. Dad had known. He had known about the natural gas deposit beneath the station long before I had ever set foot here. He had kept it secret for decades, waiting for the right moment. The words on the page were clear. The station sat on top of one of the largest natural gas deposits in the state, worth $50 million. At the very least, I felt a mixture of shock and awe. Dad had planned this. All those years of hard work, of barely making ends meet, had been leading up to this moment. And now, it was up to me to protect it, my family, my legacy, and the future that Dad had worked so hard to secure. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the document. The weight of what I had discovered was overwhelming. The gas station was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a gold mine, a treasure hidden in plain sight. And I was the only one who knew. For now. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had shifted. What had once seemed like an old family business was now a treasure trove waiting to be uncovered. And I was the one entrusted with it. My brothers, David and Jack, had no idea what I had just learned. They thought the station was dead, its value long gone, but I now knew otherwise. The more I thought about it, the more determined I became. There was no way I was going to let them take this from me. The moment they left, I locked myself inside the station and pored over the files. Every document, every letter, every note Dad had left behind, there had to be something else. Something that would tell me exactly what to do next. I found a series of letters, dated from the late 70s, each one filled with meticulous notes about mineral rights, geological surveys, and the gradual accumulation of assets. Dad hadn't just stumbled upon this deposit, he'd planned for it all along. The key was in the documents he had kept hidden, scattered among the clutter in his office. One by one, they painted a picture of a man who, despite the hardships, had never lost sight of the bigger picture. He had invested not just time and money, but his heart into this business. The land was not just property to him, it was a promise to us. to his children, and he had left a trail for me to follow. One I knew my brothers would never notice. Hours turned into days, and still, I couldn't put the pieces down. I was almost afraid to stop. The more I uncovered, the more I felt Dad's presence around me. It was as if he was still here, guiding me, even though I had never seen the full scope of his vision until now. And in that moment, I realized that what he had given me was more than just an inheritance, it was a responsibility. The station, the land, the future, they were all mine to protect now. Just as I thought I might be getting closer to understanding Dad's grand plan, I received an unexpected visitor. It was George Martinez, the local environmental engineer who had known Dad for over 40 years. He had always been a friend of the family, someone Dad trusted implicitly when it came to the environmental regulations surrounding the station. I knew George had a reputation for being able to read land like few others. And his expertise might be just what I needed. "Sarah," George greeted me warmly as I opened the door. His weathered face broke into a smile, though his eyes carried the weight of something deeper. He could see the change in me. The realization that I was no longer just running a gas station. I was now at the helm of something far greater. "George," I said, trying to mask the unease in my voice. "What brings you here?" "I came to see how you were holding up," he replied. "And I heard some rumors about your brothers trying to buy you out. I figured I'd stop by to make sure you were aware of what you were sitting on." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" George motioned for me to sit down at the desk. As he did, he pulled out a set of satellite images on his tablet, pointing to certain areas behind the station. "Sarah, I've been looking at your father's property for years. And based on recent satellite data, I can tell you something your brothers have likely missed. This property sits directly above one of the largest natural gas deposits in the state. Conservative estimates say it could be worth $50 million in extraction rights alone." My heart skipped a beat. There it was, confirmation of everything I had suspected, everything I had feared. The very land my brothers had dismissed as worthless was, in fact, sitting on a gold mine. My fingers trembled as I looked at the images. The reality of it all settling in. I had known there was something special about this place, but I hadn't understood the full extent until now. George could see the shock on my face. "It's real, Sarah," he said quietly, "and your father knew it. He had everything in place. All the legal work, the mineral rights, and the environmental reports. It's all there if you know where to look." I swallowed hard, trying to absorb the magnitude of what George had just told me. I had only just scratched the surface. But I knew then that the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about keeping the family business alive. It was about protecting something far more valuable. And if I wasn't careful, I could lose it all to those who didn't understand its worth. "Thank you, George," I said, my voice steadying. "I think I need to take a closer look at everything. Can you help me with that?" "Of course," he replied, his eyes softening. "I've got your back, Sarah, but you'll need to move fast. If your brothers figure this out, they'll stop at nothing to get what they think is theirs." I nodded, my resolve strengthening. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about honoring Dad's legacy. About proving that sometimes the best treasures are hiding in plain sight. I just had to be patient enough to see them for what they truly were. As the months passed, everything changed. Thompson's Gas and Service Station, once a fading relic, was transformed into Thompson Energy Corporation. The building was restored to its 1975 glory, preserving the legacy my father had built, while the backlot, once filled with weeds and overgrown brush, became a state-of-the-art natural gas extraction facility. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about ensuring Dad's vision became a reality. And doing it with the same integrity he had always maintained. The town was buzzing with excitement. Jobs were created, the economy revitalized, and the environment was preserved with the latest technology. We made sure that the local community felt the benefits, just as Dad had always intended. Even the scholarship fund for environmental engineering students was established in his honor, ensuring that the future of this small town would be shaped by the same principles that had guided my father's work. As for my brothers, They came around, eventually seeing the value in what had been built. They joined the board of directors, though in non-controlling positions, of course. Sometimes, the best way to heal family wounds is to give others a chance to earn what they thought they deserved. Over time, we all learned that value is not just in what others see, but in what you are willing to invest in: time, faith, love. Those are the real assets that truly appreciate. Every morning, I still arrive early at the station. Just like Dad taught me. The old Phillips 66 sign stands proudly, now side by side with our new logo. And in my office, I keep two things on display: Dad's original geological survey and a framed quote he once wrote to me: "The true value of anything, property, business, family, isn't in what others think it's worth, but in what you're willing to invest in it." Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow more life stories.